a new vision for culture in Rochester. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing. And please welcome Ann McKenna, VP of St. John's Foundation, Rochester Rotarian since April of 2021, for the opening prayer.
Thank you, Christine. Heavenly Father, we ask your blessings upon our guests today who bring entertainment, joy, and nourishment to our community. Today, we'll share the prayer of St. Francis and ask your blessing upon all Rotary members who, like St. Francis, strive to put service above self. Lord, make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Heavenly Father, grant that I may not seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, or to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and in dying that we are born to eternal life.
Thanks, Ann. Please be seated. Please welcome Sergeant of Arms Tom O'Connor, President of El Segal Community of Services Agencies, Rochester Rotarian since March of 2020.
Thank you, Christine. Good afternoon, everyone. I have the pleasure of welcoming one guest today, and that guest's name is Carl Sasanti. He's here from RG&E, and he's a guest of Veronica Dasher. Carl, welcome. If you'd like to stand. And a one clap welcome to Carl. I'm just wondering, Scott, does this take the pressure off you today? Yep, okay, well, and then I have some announcements to make here relative to birthdays, and we've got a number of them. So, on March 29th, Pat Stack. March 29th, Jim Isaac. March 31st, Jerry DeMarco. March 31st, Paul Guglielmi. Oh, I got that. I was close, Paul. Sorry. March 31st, Sharon Stiller. April 1st, Marianne Lakahalit. April 2nd, Joanne Ryan. April 3rd, Meredith Lamb. And April 4th, Rich Gianforte. And for announcements, just a reminder, this Saturday, April 2nd, from 12:30 to 3 p.m. in the Gizzy Sensory Building at the Sunshine Rotary Camp, bring your best batch of soup, chili, or dip. And that's not a friend, that's a dip you can bring along. This is a great event to bring your family and friends along with, your favorite drinks, to vote on your favorite dishes. Prizes will be given out to the best dish in each category. You can sign up for a dish to pass or attend on the Rochester Rotary website. And then as a reminder about our Eastern Cities Fellowship Dinner, the Rotary International President Shakar Mata and his wife Rashi will join us live on April 19th at the Floriano Riverside Convention Center. Tickets are $75. They will be limited to 250 people. Don't miss out on this wonderful opportunity for Rotary Fellowship and a chance to greet the current international president. Sign up on the Rochester Rotary website. Thank you all.
Thanks a lot, Tom. You're actually helping me get rid of my nerves. You are so natural up here, so it's great. Next, what I'd like to do is welcome Dr. Kathleen Wright-Noth, psychologist and high performance coach, to present the news of the day. Kathleen.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming. So the weather today is unfortunately a continuation of winter, but it will soon be over and we have a sunny afternoon and it will be for the rest of today, so that's awesome. And for the rest of the week, it will vary from a daytime high of 67 on Thursday, and then a low of 43 on Friday the next day, with a nighttime low of 18 on Wednesday, and then 41 on Thursday. And although we don't get much sun in the winter in Rochester, I am personally very grateful we don't have hurricanes, or tornadoes, or wildfires, or earthquakes, or unending heat in the summer like in Arizona, so I try to focus on that and be grateful of that. So, because sometimes the lack of sun gets old. And in national news, a big story, if you have been living under a rock, in the last couple of days is Will Smith slapping Chris Rock across the face on the stage at the Academy Awards for telling an insensitive joke about his wife. And many people have been judging Will Smith in a big way for doing that, and some have expressed compassion for what led him to doing that. And he has posted a heartfelt apology on Instagram, including adding an apology to Chris Rock, which he did not do in his acceptance speech. And a major headline in the New York Times today is that there are signs of progress in the talks between Russia and Ukraine. Another headline is President Biden's statement that he will not apologize for saying that Vladimir Putin should no longer be president of Russia. He said the statement was an expression of his outrage on what Putin has been doing in Ukraine, and that he doubts that his statement will alter Putin's course of action in any way. And I hope so. I hope that's true. And in local news, the Rock on Tech Conference is coming up on April 13th, and I think it's super awesome that Steve Wozniak is going to be the keynote speaker for that. It should be interesting. And also the Buffalo Bills, New York State, and Erie County have reached an agreement on a $1.4 billion stadium. So that's awesome. The new stadium will be in Orchard Park again, and Christine just told me it's not going to have a roof, which I'm surprised. But that is an advantage for the Bills not to have a roof, I guess. So there will be an $850 million investment from taxpayers, and it is expected that the tax investment will be recouped by all the money the Bills are going to bring in, and also when they win, finally, and go all the way. So that's it.
Thanks, Kathleen. Next, I'd like to welcome Andy Weiner, Sales Manager of Cascades, Rochester Rotarian since October of 2019. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Christine. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you in person. We have speaking today a couple folks who are going to help us. Pam Sherman is a leadership consultant, writer, actor, and as she likes to say, recovering lawyer. Today, Pam speaks, conducts programs, and coaches teams and leaders all over the world about how to present themselves, their stories, and their missions with passion. She's a highly rated global resource for leadership groups, including Vistage, the Entrepreneurs Organization, the Young Presidents Organization, and Tiger 21. Her humor column, The Suburban Outlaw, inspired by Irma Bombeck, whom she played at the Jiva Theater, was published on the USA Today network, including our own Democrat Chronicle, for 15 years. Rotarians and guests, we hope you enjoyed today's panel discussion led by Pam Sherman.
Okay, usually I don't need a microphone, but I think I may because of Erica. Can you hear me? How do we turn this on? Let's see. I'm gonna. You got that? Katie, can we give her a round of applause? And well served, too.
Katie made the coffee, so we have her to thank for that. So yes, my name is Pam Sherman, and I was really honored when Andy called me up and asked if I would come and speak, and I said, but I've already spoken twice at Rochester Rotary, and the last two times I was actually fined because my husband's father was a Rotarian in Geneva, New York, and Neil Sherman, you can all email him later, is not yet a Rotarian. So I'd like to say that I'm going to make a donation in my father-in-law Elliot Sherman's memory
to Rochester Rotary. So thank you. I tried to do it in cash, but you don't do that anymore. It's all digital. I'll do it later. Okay. And also, when asked to speak again, I said, no, I'm so boring. Like, enough already. I want to hear from other people. Great change makers, cultural icons, and people who I'm interested in because they are, for me, what make me really excited about Rochester. So then I tasked everyone to go ask those people to join us, and we were really lucky that they agreed. So I want to just talk a little bit before I introduce each one of them and bring them up to the panel. You can see we're joined virtually by Erica Fee, who I'll talk about in a minute. Just wave, Erica, there you go. But I really also wanted to say why we chose this topic. First, it's completely stolen from Ken Green, if anybody knows Ken Green. He's our education co-chair this year for our local YPO Young Presidents Organization chapter. And he came up with this great idea that's taken us through our ed year, that first came the plague and then came the Renaissance. And so what will our world and Rochester and the whole world be like after this pandemic? Because we're still living in it. And for me, that always means, I think of the Renaissance, I think of the cultural explosion that we still appreciate today. And so I wanted to focus today on these icons who really have changed the landscape of Rochester and who continue to create a cultural and creative and culinary experience for all of us that elevates us. I wanted to celebrate Rochester because that's what you all do every day. So I came to Rochester, just a little bit about my story for those who don't know it, 20 years ago. You can still find my fingernail marks on the banister of my Bethesda home because they took me out feet first. I came with very small children in the dark of night in winter with my husband, who I'm still married to, almost 40 years. And I didn't know what I was going to expect when I landed in a cornfield not far from here. And the funny thing that happened was I kept my unconscious bias of what I was going to connect with here in the suburbs, which I thought meant that I was going to, pay my taxes, move to Florida, and die, and not necessarily in that order. So all of a sudden, I kept meeting amazing people who are making a difference in philanthropy, in culture, in business. And I got rid of my downstate New York myopia, and my horizons were widened in ways I never could have imagined here in Rochester. I was lucky enough to get tapped to write a column, it's all your fault, in the Democrat and Chronicle, where I got to tell the stories of great Rochesterians and what was happening in my life. And then, about 15 years ago, realizing that the small children that we brought here were going to be going to college, I decided to go back and practice law. And I know you're looking at me like, wait, she's not practicing law. I started speaking to all of my friends who were lawyers and saying, I really want to come back and I want to get back into the law. And they said, no, can you help our lawyers do what you do? I'm like, what is that? Well, the way you talk to people and ask them questions and you're curious and connect with them and help them grow who they are. And that took me on this path working, and really it was Rochester that started my business, working with Nazareth College advancement teams and Woods Oviatt lawyers and Partners in Napier creative directors, Kodak, Bausch & Lomb, Paychex, and then traveling all over the world helping leaders in far-flung places. I'm spending a lot of time right now working with medical device companies and working with teams who are innovating and how they're showing up. So for me, storytelling is key, and I do it all through this rubric called The Edge. My husband says I'm edgy because he's from Geneva, New York, not Switzerland. And I'm from Staten Island, a very dark and edgy place. And for me, it's all about exploring connections. So today we're going to explore the connections of each of these icons to Rochester. Dreaming, right? Edge is the dream. And I believe that vision is a muscle that needs to be exercised, and that the stories from our past illuminate our path to the future. So I hope they're each going to share their personal stories. Grow is all about being scared and doing it anyway. And then I hope that we'll excite your mission by linking this to each of you and what you're passionate about when you ask your questions. So with that, I'm going to introduce, first I'll start with Erica Fee, because she's joined us virtually, and we're very grateful that you're taking the time on today, which is a really big day because you've announced the opening of submissions for the Fringe Festival. But Erica Fee is the founding producer and board president of the annual KeyBank Rochester Fringe Festival, which celebrated its 9th year in 2020. Under her stewardship, this nonprofit has blossomed from the mere seed of an idea to one of the most attended fringe festivals in the United States. It has become an internationally known powerhouse festival for new theater, comedy, music, and dance, and it is a Rochester model for the visionary presentation of an annual outdoor, free performing arts spectacle show. In fact, the Rochester Fringe hosted the U.S. Association of Fringe Festivals in 2018. For a decade prior, Fee lived in the United Kingdom, running her own London-based theatrical production and general management company. And her many producing, directing, and performance credits include UK premieres, London runs, Edinburgh Fringe runs, which I went to almost 40 years ago this September. She was the first American to receive the prestigious, I'm gonna just keep reading. Most importantly, she's a graduate of the University of Rochester and was the commencement speaker in 2016. I hope you don't mind, Erica, if I edited a bit out, because otherwise I'm gonna take up all the time reading your incredible accolades. So, and I'd like you to tell your story. Next up, we have Thomas Warfield, who's gonna join me in whatever seat he prefers. Thomas Warfield is an international performing artist, and he grew up in Rochester and has lived in 6 countries. He's performed on stage, television, and film. He is the founding artistic director of Peace Art International, a global peace organization. He's worked with Spike Lee, Franco Zeffirelli, Marvin Hamlisch. I could go on and on, but I'm also going to edit. For nearly 2 decades, he produced the World AIDS Day benefit concert in Rochester, and he's been the director of dance at the National Technical Institute for the Deaf at RIT for 24 years. He has won numerous awards. He has a BFA in dance from SUNY Purchase and an MFA in dance ethnology from the University of Utah. I could go on and on, but you can also find his first solo album, Celebrate the Moment, on Spotify. Okay, so next we have Chuck Serenkowski. He is a restaurateur, designer, and hospitality consultant, and the co-owner of the great restaurants Good Luck and Cure, where he pioneered the first cocktail programs in Rochester. He also established and operated Radio Social, Bar Bantam, and the recently opened Jack Rabbit Club. And then in 2014, he founded the Rochester Cocktail Revival, New York State's only week-long spirits festival. And in 2020, he and his partners opened Lucky's Best Wings in Rochester, in case you haven't had them, on Winton Road. And they are now working on consulting on the recent update to the food and beverage at the Stratton Allen Hotel. Chuck received his bachelor's degree in industrial design from RIT. So we have RIT and U of R represented right here. So welcome, Chuck. Thank you very much. Okay, so enough from me. I'm going to start with you, Erica. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Rochester Fringe Festival for those who may have been living under a rock for the last 10 years? And how you decided to come back to Rochester to start this amazing institution?
Sure, thanks for the question, Pam. I hope you all can hear me. So the Rochester Fringe Festival is going into its 11th year this year. We are New York State's largest multidisciplinary performing arts festival. In 1947, Pam was talking a little bit about the Edinburgh Fringe, and in 1947 what happened was there were 8 theater companies who were not invited to participate in the newly formed Edinburgh International Festival in Edinburgh, Scotland, and they decided to turn up anyway in this kind of post-war spirit. So they brought their sets and their costumes and their props, and they put on shows, and there was a reviewer who was trying to figure out, what do I call these shows that aren't part of the official program? They nicknamed them the Festival Fringe. Well, it was also assumed that this was just a coincidence and it could never be replicated, but it actually wound up snowballing into what's now the world's largest arts festival. And it's resulted in the birth of about 250 fringe festivals worldwide. Rochester started our first year as a festival was 2012, but planning started in 2008. And that planning actually started with President Joel Sullivan from the University of Rochester. And in 2009, I happened to be in town just on a visit, and I was having a chat with the head of the theater department at the University of Rochester, and I said, why do you think it is that Rochester doesn't have a fringe festival? And he said, it's funny you should ask this. You should go and meet with President Sullivan. So one thing led to another, and I was asked to put together a proposal for a fringe, and I did, and I wound up coming back to Rochester in 2009, and that's when our efforts really kicked into high gear. But we are a nonprofit festival. Most festivals in the Rochester area are for-profit, but we are a nonprofit. And we really strive to provide a platform for artists, whether they are emerging or whether they are superstars. We are trying to be of service to artists, whether they are Rochesterians or returning to Rochester or from other parts of the country or the world. And the exciting thing I think about the Fringe is that it allows attendees into venues that they may not otherwise frequent. And we do find from reports from these venues that when we do expose attendees to these venues, they find that they have an uptick in their attendance. So we're really looking forward to getting back at it this year. We just announced that submissions are opening. But hopefully that answers your question, Pam.
It certainly does. I have to say, we've had some of the best experiences at the Fringe Festival. In the tent, I'm going to pronounce it incorrectly, so I'll let you say it.
The Spiegel tent?
Yes.
The Spiegel tent, yeah. We have, that's a tent that we rented. We are looking to build our own, actually, and so efforts for that are underway. But that's a beautiful Belgian kind of music hall, really, with inlaid. We have inlaid oak floors and beautiful mirrors. Spiegel means mirror, and velvet ceilings, and that lives across from the Eastman Theater during the festival. We haven't had it since 2019, but hopefully we'll have some sort of. We might have it back this year. We may have an alternative tent, but we are looking to build our own. But yes, we have about 20 to 25 venues downtown. In fact, Thomas regularly performs at the Little Theater for Fringe, which is one of our venues.
I just saw the list of venues and then the list of sponsors. If you go on the Fringe, it really is an incredible compendium of sponsorship that you've put together of great Rochester businesses and other nonprofits. So thank you for sharing about your organization. So Chuck, can you share a little bit about your organization and then also talk about the festival that you are the visionary founder of?
Sure. So I'm one of the partners in an operating company called DMC Restaurant Management. My partners are Dan Martello and Michael Calabrese. We have operated restaurant Good Luck since 2008. We added a French restaurant called Pure to the group in 2012 that shares a space with Michael's Javas at the public market. We have an event center called Jackrabbit Club next to Good Luck, and we have a restaurant on Winter Road called Lucky's. Independently, I've had some management contracts that COVID ended, but on good terms with, I set up, designed and established Radio Social over on Carlton Road with Dan Morgenstern back in 2017. I helped the Galenas in their purchase of the Metropolitan Tower, the former Chase building downtown, put a restaurant on the ground floor of that building. Our company, we're kind of in and out. We consulted and helped the Strathallen's food and beverage program get back on its feet. We're not currently doing that, but we were doing that up until March 1st of this year. And then back in 2014, I founded a festival in Rochester to highlight food and beverage culture called the Rochester Cocktail Revival. It is obviously focused, leans a little bit heavier on beverage, but it celebrates all of the great cocktail talents and spirits, and distilleries, and the fact that Rochester is very, very, very good at drinking. Celebrates that for a full week. So that'll be its ninth, the ninth installment of that festival will happen this June, the 6th and 12th. But yeah, our restaurant group has currently just under 200 employees total. We've got everything from banquet offerings to full service restaurants that operate 7 days a week in some form or another. The flagship, the Buck, though, is still stubbornly only open Wednesday through Saturday. Things are going well. We took a long play through the pandemic and beat the heck out of us, but we emerged on the other side. So that's what we do.
Awesome. And then Thomas, tell us a little bit about, you are the founder of an incredible organization, Peace Arts, and then also your role at RIT. So tell us a little bit about the organizations that you lead.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? No, I don't think it's on.
Is it on? It sounds like it's on.
Oh, okay, I can't hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So Peace Art, which is an organization I founded in 1990, actually while I was a grad student at the University of Utah, kind of has its beginning some years before that. So I grew up here in Rochester, and I was in an opera. There was an opera company here then called Opera Theater of Rochester that Ruth Rosenberg was the producer. Some of you may still remember her. And I grew up as a child in the opera company and the children's chorus, actually along with Renee Fleming and her parents. I was going to be an opera singer. I come from a family of actually opera singers, so it just seemed natural that I was going to be an opera singer. But somewhere on the road, I discovered dance. I think it was in the Opera Carmen, actually. And I decided, well, that's what I really want to do. And so when I finished high school, I moved to New York. I joined, my first job was the Joffrey Ballet. And I had studied ballet here in Rochester with Olive McHugh at the Mercury Ballet. Also, where Tim Joyberg was a student who eventually started Rochester City Ballet many years later. Anyway, I actually had an injury in the first few months there, and I decided, well, it's time to be an opera singer, so I joined the New York City Opera Chorus. And anyway, long story. But eventually I did an opera at the Met with director Franco Zeffirelli, and he was the one who actually convinced me to go back to school and finish the school first, and so that's what I did. Eventually, I started dancing with different companies. When I was in college, I was tapped by Merce Cunningham to join his dance company as soon as I finished college. But I got an offer for a Chinese dance company in Macau, and I decided, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that. Let's get out of New York and go to Macau. So I went to Macau, and I lived in Macau and Hong Kong for quite a while. And as I toured with this company, and every time we toured, we went to a different place, and I would stay on in the country to kind of go along, look around on my own. So we were in China, actually actually Mongolia it was. And when the company left, I decided to just travel around on my own. And at the time, I didn't read or speak Chinese, and so I didn't really know where I was going, but I got on a train and it went somewhere. And so a couple hours I got off. Anyway, when I got off the train, I was in this remote village, and I saw this little girl, and when she saw me, she was petrified, because, there were no foreigners, and certainly nobody whose skin is dark like this. And there was no electricity there either, so I mean, they didn't have television, or, So anyway, I kind of played with this girl with a little drawing on the ground with little sticks, and we never spoke to each other because we couldn't really understand each other. Then the train came and I went back, and some years later I realized my interaction with this little girl taught me a huge lesson about, how we always talk about we're all one people, world people, but what does it really mean in our daily lives? But actually I understood what it meant.
because I had met this girl, I connected deeply with this girl, and I wanted other people to have this opportunity. So the first thing I did was create this sort of global poem for peace. And because I'm a poet and I like to write poetry, and I thought people could write poetry to each other and so not even meet, but still connect to one another very profoundly. And so people started writing their little poems and sending them back to me, and farmers in China and soldiers in Nicaragua and people from all over the place. And some famous people wrote. Mother Teresa wrote a poem, Jimmy Carter wrote a poem, the Dalai Lama wrote a poem. And one day I received a letter from Leonard Bernstein, and he had written a 2-page poem. And he said, I want to hear more about this and what you're doing. So anyway, I met with him for lunch one day outside Lincoln Center, and he told me something very important that changed my whole life. He said, the artist is the person that moves society forward. That is your job, that is your responsibility. And you need to take this broader than poetry, because this is what you're meant to do, it's your destiny. And it reminded me of a scripture about where there is no vision, people perish, in Proverbs somewhere. And so I thought, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And so I was off to graduate school at the University of Utah, and I created this group called Dance Art at the time that would raise money and awareness about social issues in some way. And the first thing we did actually was raise money for the Doctors Without Borders in France, who were going over to Romania to take care of orphans. It was right after the Berlin Wall came down. And so eventually it became peace art. And a group of friends and I would travel from country to country and community to community and work in these small communities to help people use the arts to kind of understand one another. And actually, it's not even about understanding one another. It's really about just being with one another. And as they're creating, as creativity does, it sort of takes away these boundaries and these barriers between us and that prevent us, in a sense, from connecting so deeply and profoundly with each other. So that's basically what I've been doing the rest of my life, even though I have been at RIT for 24 years.
Wow, okay. I'm so blessed that you three are here, because I often, see Chuck running through a restaurant, or Thomas and I will be at a theater waving across the way, and then Erica I usually see with, headphones and a clipboard running through the streets of downtown Rochester. But to stop and hear that story about how you make a connection just by drawing something in the sand, and what your vision was for the world, thank you for that. But it's interesting, because it was one of the questions I wanted to ask you all. You all have deep connections to Rochester. Erica, when I go to bars around the world and I mention I'm from Rochester, they're not interested in Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass. They're interested in the Fee brothers. And really, so you have a deep and storied legacy here. Thomas Warfield, Dr. William Warfield, was world famous opera singer, and your mother was a minister here. And then Chuck is from Rochester and now raising the next generation of the creative class, and your daughter, who I'm a huge fan of. So I just want to ask Erica, what's the legacy of for you that you think of for Rochester? Why do you love Rochester, and why did you come back, right?
Well, I have to be honest, Pam, when I happened to be back in town in 2009, literally on, like I said, a vacation, it was as much a surprise to me as anyone that I was suddenly considering coming back, because it had nothing to do with Rochester. It was because I had established a successful company in London, and it had taken a while. Especially as an American, you're reminded of that every day, that you're not kind of one of the gang in the UK. And so it had taken me a while to kind of break through that glass ceiling. So I didn't think that I would be coming back after all of that hard work and effort. But that said, I had always had part of my mind, I had always thought, man, I think that Rochester would be great for a fringe festival location. Yes, I do have deep familial roots here in the Rochester area. I guess I'm the last of the people who are surviving in the area with the Fee name. My family did come here, and even some, in fact, for the fees, came to Rochester and worked downtown, in fact. Fee Brothers started as a butcher store at the corner of Main and St. Paul, and then developed into the four brothers selling sandwiches to people on the canal. And then one thing led to another, and they made an absolute fortune at the end of the 1800s through liquor sales, which was then promptly lost due to prohibition, and they went bankrupt. So I think that there's a real commitment to Rochester, though, that the company has remained here, and has and a commitment probably to the United States too, has kept on going. I think that Rochester, in so many ways, has the best of all worlds, a wonderful quality of life. But one thing that we noticed with the Fringe in particular, and the reason that we wanted to start the Fringe here was, and I'm sure that Thomas can attest to this too, is the so many performing arts professionals living in Rochester and based in Rochester that in fact we're using this area as their base, and we're touring nationally and internationally. Really, if you compare a city of our size with other cities in the US, you do not see this number of cultural institutions or performing artists. So we are very, very blessed here, and I think that sometimes we don't even realize it just because we're so used to it. But I think Rochester is very, very unique in that regard.
I love being an ambassador for Rochester around the world. YPO, the Young Presidents Organization, was founded here by Ray Hickok. And I love to surprise people about all the, like Rochester, what's Minnesota? No. Michigan? No. New York. Chuck, what do you love about Rochester? And I know you have raising your family here, and tell them about your daughter and her entrepreneurial vision in the fashion industry too.
Sure. Yeah, I'm originally from the Cleveland area.
Oh wow!
But I came here. I came here for college. I went to RIT and then stayed on after. Had kids young. My oldest daughter Sophie is currently a student at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York, but she founded a. They did it 1 year, but they'll returning for a second edition this summer. She founded a market that she calls the Lucky Flea with her partner that will take place at the Village Gate. I'm guessing that not a lot of people in the room have been there because I feel way too old. Okay, so I'm
very hip.
I don't even know the generational term for the age that goes to it. It's
yes.
Like, it's not Z, it's like, after that one, I don't know what they call it. My daughter is entrepreneurial, and she figured out, I get a kick out of it because I would have been proud of her if she came to me and said, Dad, I'm selling vintage, but like a lot of people seem to do. She said, Dad, I started a mall. So it's pretty cool. So she has a nice, thanks to a great relationship with Alan Stern and the Village Gate there, she's planning the second summer of the Lucky Flea. That's my daughter.
Great.
Which I guess I've been assured is not an homage to my use of luck in the name of my business. Is no, Dad, it's just a coincidence. That's what we're calling.
There you go. I have to say, I didn't know you were from Cleveland. When we moved up here, and all my friends were like, where are you going? You're leaving Washington? Oh, well, at least it's not Cleveland. That's what somebody said to me. Look, Cleveland, they have Major League Sports, but I'm so grateful it's not Cleveland and that I ended up here. What do you love about Rochester, Thomas, with all the places that you've lived in?
Well, Rochester is a fertile ground, and I think that's really, Rochester is always ready to grow something. And I think that's, for an artist, that's really a wonderful place to root yourself. And I think not just for the artists, but if you're just raising a family here, the rooting here is so deep. And growing up here was really one of the great things of my life, because it was a wonderful place for me to grow up and to understand about all different kinds of people and backgrounds. And So yeah, I think it's a fertile ground for almost anything you want to do. You find a way to do it here.
I'm thrilled that my children are from Rochester, and my son is 26 and about to graduate from business school and was just in Mexico with all of his high school friends. And my daughter is graduated from college and connecting to Rochesterians, where she lives now in Chicago. So there's that, instant handshake. I always say that people here like to ask you how you are and wait to hear the answer. What an amazing thing, right, to have. So let's just talk about, since this is about from the plague to the Renaissance, I know, Erica, you were very vocal about the performing arts and what was going to happen as a result of the shutdown, and you as well, Chuck, in ensuring that those who support us in the hospitality industry would continue to be employed. So how did you weather the pandemic? I know you did a virtual fringe that was very successful, but can you talk a little bit about how you weathered it and your advocacy on behalf of other arts organizations, Erica?
Yeah, great question, thank you. Well, we did push forward, and we had a virtual fringe in 2020. Last year, we had more in-person events. We were able to have in-person events. However, some of our big venues were still closed in 2021, like Jiva and School of the Arts and some others. To be quite honest, the performing arts, and I'm sure that Thomas can speak to this too, is still really, really suffering at the moment. Thank God that we had the Save Our Stages federal funding, and other performing arts organizations did too, because I think that probably none of the arts organizations that you know and love in Rochester would have been left if we hadn't had that. And I'm not exaggerating, because we were the first to close and the last to reopen. Nationwide attendance at performing arts events is still 50% of what it was prior to the pandemic starting. So we have a lot of problems right now in the performing arts that are, need to be addressed in terms of revenue. It's not a very good situation right now for performing arts organizations nationwide.
Chuck, I know that you were very vocal around the hospitality industry and ensuring that your workers had safe and consistent work. Can you share a little bit about your advocacy?
Yeah, we found ourselves after. I want to make sure I frame this I had a lot of frustration around policy and being in small business. Restaurant is a very regulated forum. To open a restaurant, you follow a lot of building codes and health codes. By doing that, I'll postulate two things. You're going to accept that you are going to be under a lot of different mandates and a lot of different regulations. So the fact that you are an operator and you would maybe say, oh, we can't make people wear masks, that's all fluid, because you're agreeing to say that, well, you got to wear a shirt inside, or your employees have to wash their hands or pass a test to cook food. But at the same time, we follow all those rules because we have to prove to the public that we're a safe place to be. And we went through all those rules and then found ourselves been shut down again, and then subject to a whole mess of silly regulations. And I don't mean when we got to capacity or when we got down to the fact that we're supposed to take some extra steps. I'm talking about when the state regulations divided the city into different zones that were color coded. When it divided into different zones, you could go down the street. It seemed pretty myopic to the fact that Rochester is a driving city. You can drive around the corner or be in a different zone or whatever. It caused us, quite frankly, those 150 and change people I talked about. We laid them all off the day before Thanksgiving in late 2020. Again, after we had already gone through it, and it was quite frustrating. So I started a pretty vocal campaign with some other restaurateurs. Again, in a measured civil way. This wasn't pounding your fist against the table about my rights. This was about a sensible policy, because you have to do business. And we thankfully made enough noise that we got in talks with Enterprise. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the Bob Duffy's organization now, was very helpful, a big advocate for our cause, and then so was Adam Bella. We got on a couple conference calls with him because to sympathize with both Erica and Thomas. I think the arts organizations had it even worse than we did, but I could speak for my restaurant colleagues only saying it was close to being over. It would have been an unsustainable business if it had gone on a couple weeks longer. We just abandoned it because you've gotta have the hope for the future to sustain to be able to make it, make a living. So
we're very grateful for your advocacy and both of you. I guess the question is, look, we're still going through this, and I'm just back from New York where I sat. Vaccine was checked, sat with my mask on, went to 4 shows, packed theaters. So I was really grateful to see that. And I know we're going to shift to questions. Is that from the audience? We're pretty good. But Thomas, what if anything would you keep from this period of time? If we can let go of the post-traumatic stress disorder or the actual still stress disorder that we're going through, is there anything you would keep from the learning that you've had in this pandemic?
Well, I was a fortunate performing artist because I worked for a university, and so I had my job and my paycheck. But of course, we were teaching online. I think I would keep Zoom, actually. The meeting thing is kind of good that I could just roll out of bed and go to the meeting. I do like that, so let's keep that. I think also it did, though, get us thinking, how do we interact? And so for me, for example, we went online and students weren't able to see each other, so I created a workshop online called Broadway Comes to RIT, and so all of my Broadway friends who were out of work, we hired them to do workshops online, and so we kept that.
Brilliant.
And so we've been doing that with local artists as well. So I think there are some, there's some positive things here that we should take. And we should build on. As I said, this is a fertile place, and we can kind of build and rebuild. So that's what we're doing.
Anything, Erica, that in the pivots that you had to make that you'll keep? Well, obviously you're coming to us by Zoom. What a gift! We wouldn't otherwise have you, right? So I'm sure that creates connections to artists from all over the world that you can one day bring to Rochester, right?
Yeah, actually, what we found in 2020 was when we pivoted to a digital model, we were able to, suddenly expand our audience pool. We suddenly had audience from all over the world. And secondly, we were able to have performers from all over the world who didn't need work visas, which was very convenient. So we actually did continue with a virtual digital section last year in our programming, and we're going to continue with that this year because there's many people for a variety of reasons who cannot attend an in-person festival, whether they live in the area or whether they are out of the area. And it's also becoming an art form in and of itself, some of the digital shows. So we're definitely going to stick with that portion for sure.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I didn't think it was possible to, I've always coached virtually, but I didn't think I could do my team facilitations virtually or hybrid. And, after 2 days with a group of engineers from my house, this is the best, with people from Hong Kong and France and all in one room, putting them into breakout rooms. I'm very grateful for the virtual possibilities that have been created. Chuck, it's hard to eat virtually, but one day we're gonna have smell-o-vision. Anything you might keep from what we've all are going through and been through?
Being entrepreneurial is solving problems, and I think if there's any good to take from it, it's just appreciating both the resilience of our staff and the graciousness of our guests, and just admiring the way that we were able to pivot constantly to make it through.
Yeah, I admire it too, and I thank you for the best takeout fries and in Rochester. So I want to make sure it is now 5 to 1 or 10 to 1. We want to open it up to questions from the audience. If you state it, I'll repeat it rather than sharing the microphone. We are in a pandemic. Any questions from you Rotarians? Yes, Dan.
So obviously we know that there's a challenge in terms of job openings and finding talented folks to fill those jobs. What's the perspective from like the arts community?
So job openings in the arts community and certainly in the hospitality industry, finding people to fill those positions that you might be seeking. Erica?
To be quite honest, it's been a huge challenge. We really found, especially with many of our vendors, this past year's festival, that they simply didn't have the staff that they did before. So it was very challenging. Well, I'm not seeing any improvement in that arena at all. We're seeing a lot of people who are changing careers. Many people left the performing arts during the beginning part of the pandemic due to all of the reasons of it being totally closed. So it's been a very big challenge.
I worry about that gap of all those kids who dreamed about being on stage and, you know, whether they'll, I remember when I wanted to be an actor and my parents were like, no, go to law school. It's a risky profession anyway, right? But then being totally denied the ability to practice your craft makes it even scarier. Chuck, what about you in terms of staff? And I know this is one of the biggest challenges in that my husband's in the food industry and is a CIA fellow. That's the food people, not the spies. And tell us a little bit about the challenges.
It's the hardest that we've ever seen it. I've been in food service since I was in high school, so my 20 years, but in management. But it's hard, but I guess to put it in some framework that makes sense. We use in our restaurants our PPP loans. We use them for what they're intended to, which is to buy boats. Okay. We use them for what they're intended to, which would we kept our core staff employed. So instead of laying them off, all of our management, and then all of the principal cooks and things like that. What has been hard, and I think is a symptom of almost what Pam just described in arts. Cyclically, you're going to have in a restaurant setting, you're going to have those that work there in a career format. We have kind of 40 to 60. We have salaried positions that pay quite well. And those people are going to look at it as their career in hospitality. Then you're going to have ancillary staff that are going to be, I go to nursing school, I want to meet people, so I'm going to try to work 3 nights a week. I'm working through college, I'm going to bus tables 4 nights a week. That whole labor pool got interrupted because when the pandemic happened, none of us as parents were telling our kid to get off the couch and go bus tables at a restaurant, and none of us were thinking it would be a good idea to go to nursing school and then get a job to meet people at night, because employment was scary, it was unreliable, or it was just I guess inconsistent. It's the same, but I think we just kind of seen a bubble, almost like in a pipeline. We don't have all that talent coming in. You're just not seeing as many applications. It is getting better. In fact, our restaurant that Lucky's that opened 2 weeks before the pandemic started, we'll be back to 7 days a week next week. So it's getting better. We're finding the staff, but it's tough.
These are passion professions, right? But at least we have RIT and the work that you're doing there to bring up the next generation, Thomas. I did, before we go back to the audience, there was, Chuck, you had asked me to ask a great question. What do you think the most important element of the Rochester restaurant culture that you want this audience to be aware of as patrons? You have an answer for that question that you suggested?
I do. I read the emails very carefully, and I showed up here on time. I didn't know the context. I didn't know I'd be speaking with people that are, quite honestly, a little more immersed in the arts than I am. I'm a little bit of a...
We all have to eat after we go see those shows, right?
Well, and that's the thing. Similar to what Erica said about the cultural institutions here, there's an amazing restaurant culture in Rochester. It is disproportionate to the population. For the most part, us as operators, our colleagues, of course we compete in a certain sense, but we understand that working together in this community is what makes it, it just makes it more vibrant. And just appreciate what you have when you're ready, or you know, you just make sure you understand how this network of hospitality in the city, like it is very valuable to setting a foundation for whether they're a dinner after a show, or a dinner or a dinner, you know, to thank clients or something like that. You're gonna, as much as we want to see enterprise happen in Rochester, I think it starts by having food and drink culture beneath it. So there's somewhere to go out to damn dinner, and there's a very good network of restaurants here. So don't overlook it, appreciate it, and give them a chance. There's new ones opening all the time, and most of the operators are pretty cool people.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Thank you for asking that question and then answering it too.
I do that all the time.
Christine.
No, I just wanted to thank all of you. Phenomenal presentation. I'd like everyone to give them just a round of applause.
And actually, I made a gift, and Erica, I'll make sure you get one. We had branded these bracelets from South Africa that are made in Cape Town, South Africa, and then benefit the all-girl charter school here in Rochester and the Center for Youth. And I made sure to give the organizers and then each of the panelists one, and I'll make sure you get one too, Erica, because you guys are all outlaw leaders, as I like to call you, and thank you all to the Rochester Rotary for having us.
Before you leave, before you step out, I'd like to invite Deb Burr to come up and present you with a couple of gifts from the Rochester Rotary. Gifts.
So I am new to Rochester about 1.5 years now, and oh gee, sorry.
You're done.
Yeah, so I've been around. Salvation Army moves us, so we just accept placements wherever we are. And Erica, I was in London for the last 3 years, so another city I love. However, Rochester is a place I never wanted to go. You know, it wasn't on my list to place me there. However, what an incredible place. And you've just talked about that and confirmed that. I can't wait to see some of the Fringe Festival. I haven't been a part of that at all, so that's exciting to think about, and restaurants and the arts, love it. So this is a good place, and I am very happy to be in Rochester. Only for another little more than 1 year, and then we move on to retirement. Hallelujah.
Retired here.
Sorry, South Carolina's warmer. Yeah, I love it all here except your winters. So anyway, we do have gifts for each of you. Erica, you'll get yours at a later point, I assume. Sir, direct from the camp, Sunshine Camp that the Rotary has. However, it's not just syrup. Do you know that this stuff is like a hair conditioner? It's a facial moisturizer. And if you drink a 1/4 cup of this every day, it contains many of the minerals that you need, your daily allowance of minerals. I wouldn't suggest you do that. However, it is. So it's a miracle in a bottle, youth in a bottle, that we are presenting to all of you today. Where is it? Oh, right
here. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you.
The Rotary also supports Roberto Clemente, is it number 8, the school, and with library books. So what we would really appreciate from you, if you would sign this book for the school, and it'll be put in the library there. So we are grateful for your time and for all that you presented to us today. Thank you.
Okay, to finish up the meeting, we have a quote of the day, and it kind of reflects the theme that we just heard, from the plague to the Renaissance. Alec Wilder, the great American composer, was born in Rochester, New York in February of 1907 to a prominent family and owner of the Wilder Downtown Building in Rochester, New York. Alec several times visited New York City with his mom. He became very interested in the music, and he became a composer. He studied under two very famous composers from the Eastman School of Music, but he never officially attended class or graduated. But he was self-taught, and he did classical, popular, operas, chamber, solo, musical, large ensembles, on and on and on when you look him up. And one of his quotes was, "When you are young, no matter how many unpleasant things have happened to you, unless you become hopelessly neurotic, hope returns daily, even hourly. The sight of a beautiful person, bird, tree, house, flower can lift your spirits like the thermal does the wings of a gliding gull." The meeting is over. Thank you.